Section 1. Introduction, A World Divided, written by John Lewis Gaddis in The Cold War, A New History, The Cold War. A time of tension, suspicion, and the constant threat of nuclear annihilation, it was a global standoff between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. From the ashes of World War II, a new conflict emerged. One fought not on traditional battlefields, but in the realms of ideology, espionage, and technological prowess. It was a clash between two fundamentally different systems of governance, each vying for global dominance. On one side stood the United States, a capitalist democracy championing individual liberty and free markets. On the other side stood the Soviet Union, a communist state advocating for a centrally planned economy and a classless society. For nearly half a century, the world watched as these two titans engaged in a high-stakes game of chess, their rivalry shaping global politics, economics, and culture. This is their story. Section 2. Dawn of Distrust, Seeds of the Cold War. The seeds of the Cold War were sown even before the guns fell silent in World War II. The wartime alliance between the United States and the Soviet Union, while successful in defeating Nazi Germany, masked deep ideological differences and growing mistrust. The Soviet Union, led by the enigmatic Joseph Stalin, harbored suspicions of the West, fueled by a history of foreign interventions and a belief in the inevitability of capitalist aggression. The United States, for its part, viewed Stalin's consolidation of power in Eastern Europe with increasing alarm, seeing it as a betrayal of wartime agreements and a threat to the principles of self-determination. The Yalta Conference in 1945, intended to shape the post-war order, only served to deepen these divisions. Disagreements over the future of Poland and Germany foreshadowed the coming schism. By 1946, Winston Churchill, the wartime leader of Great Britain, famously declared that an Iron Curtain had descended across Europe, dividing East from West. The Cold War had begun. Section 3. The Iron Curtain falls, Europe divided. With the descent of the Iron Curtain, Europe found itself carved into two opposing blocs. In the East, the Soviet Union established satellite states, imposing communist regimes and suppressing dissent with an iron fist. The countries of Eastern Europe, from Poland to Bulgaria, became pawns in the Soviet sphere of influence, their destinies tied to the Kremlin's will. In the West, the United States spearheaded the creation of NATO, a military alliance designed to deter Soviet expansionism. The Marshall Plan, a massive economic aid package, helped rebuild war-torn Western Europe and served as a bulwark against the spread of communism. Germany, once the heart of the Third Reich, became a microcosm of the Cold War divide, split into a capitalist West Germany and a communist East Germany, separated by the heavily fortified Berlin Wall. Section 4. The Nuclear Threat, A New Age of Anxiety. The Cold War marked a terrifying new chapter in human history, the nuclear age. In 1945, the United States unleashed the awesome, destructive power of the atomic bomb on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The bombings brought a swift end to World War II, but ushered in an era of unprecedented danger. The Soviet Union quickly developed its own nuclear capabilities, and the world found itself teetering on the brink of nuclear annihilation. The doctrine of mutually assured destruction, or MAD, emerged, a chilling logic that held that any nuclear attack would inevitably lead to retaliation, resulting in the destruction of both aggressor and defender. The arms race was on, with both superpowers amassing ever larger and more sophisticated nuclear arsenals. Section 5. Proxy wars, conflicts on the periphery. While the United States and the Soviet Union avoided direct military confrontation, their rivalry played out in proxy wars across the globe. In Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan, the superpowers supported opposing sides, fueling bloody conflicts that claimed millions of lives. These proxy wars became testing grounds for new weapons and tactics, as well as battlefields for hearts and minds in the struggle between communism and capitalism. The Korean War, fought from 1950 to 1953, ended in a stalemate but solidified the division of the Korean Peninsula. The Vietnam War, a protracted and costly conflict that raged throughout the 1960s and early 1970s, ended in defeat for the United States and its South Vietnamese allies, a major setback for the West and a propaganda victory for communism. Section 6. The space race, reaching for the stars. The Cold War rivalry extended beyond the confines of Earth, reaching for the stars in a thrilling and terrifying space race. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite to orbit Earth, stunning the world and igniting a fierce competition for technological superiority. The United States responded with the creation of NASA and poured resources into its own space program. Yuri Gagarin, a Soviet cosmonaut, became the first human in space in 1961, another Soviet triumph. The United States ultimately won the race to the moon, landing Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the lunar surface in 1969, a defining moment in human history and a testament to American ingenuity and determination. Section 7. Cracks in the wall, signs of Thaw. Beneath the surface of superpower rivalry, cracks began to appear in the seemingly impenetrable edifice of the Cold War. The death of Stalin in 1953 led to a period of de-Stalinization in the Soviet Union as Nikita Khrushchev, his successor, denounced Stalin's crimes and sought to improve relations with the West. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, a tense standoff that brought the world to the brink of nuclear war, served as a sobering reminder of the fragility of peace and the need for dialogue. In the 1970s, a period of détente emerged, marked by arms control agreements, increased trade and cultural exchanges. The Helsinki Accords, signed in 1975, recognized the post-war borders in Europe and committed both sides to respecting human rights, a significant step toward easing tensions. Section 8. Gorbachev's reforms, Perestroika and Glasnost. The election of Mikhail Gorbachev as General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union in 1985 marked a turning point in the Cold War. Gorbachev, a young and dynamic leader, inherited a stagnant economy and a crumbling empire. Determined to revitalize the Soviet system, he introduced a series of reforms known as Perestroika, or restructuring, and Glasnost, or openness. Perestroika aimed to introduce market mechanisms into the Soviet economy, while Glasnost encouraged greater freedom of speech and reduced censorship. Gorbachev's reforms, while well-intentioned, unleashed forces that he could not control. The Soviet people, long accustomed to oppression and economic stagnation, seized upon the new freedoms, demanding greater autonomy and accountability from their leaders. Section 9. The fall of the Berlin Wall, a symbolic end. The year 1989 witnessed a wave of revolutions that swept across Eastern Europe, toppling communist regimes and shattering the Iron Curtain. In Poland, the Solidarity movement, led by Lech Walesa, forced the government to hold free elections, ushering in the first non-communist government in the Eastern Bloc. In Hungary, the government opened its border with Austria, allowing East Germans to escape to the west. On November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall, a potent symbol of Cold War division, fell as jubilant crowds tore down the barrier that had separated East and West Berlin for nearly 3 decades. The collapse of the Berlin Wall marked the symbolic end of the Cold War, signaling the imminent demise of the Soviet Empire and the triumph of democracy and capitalism. Section 10. Legacy of the Cold War, a world transformed. The Cold War, though a period of great tension and uncertainty, left an indelible mark on the world. It shaped global politics, economics and culture for nearly half a century, leaving behind a complex legacy of triumphs and tragedies. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 marked the end of the Cold War and the emergence of a new world order, one characterized by both promise and peril. The post-Cold War world has witnessed the spread of democracy and free markets, but also the rise of new challenges, including ethnic conflicts, terrorism, and the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. The lessons of the Cold War, particularly the importance of diplomacy, dialogue, and the pursuit of peace, remain as relevant as ever in our interconnected and increasingly complex world.